Christian persecution. EWTN News Nightly looks back on our trip to Iraq.
The only response to this violence is Jesus Christ. This is what we need.
Plus, what's being done on Capitol Hill.
They're desperate. They need our humanitarian assistance.
The bill in Washington to help those impacted by persecution. And women of courage.
If I'm going to preach something, I must also live it.
Our interview with a Catholic nun about living in war-torn Syria. On a special edition of EWTN News Nightly for Monday, September 4th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Tonight, we are shining a spotlight on Christian persecution and what the Catholic Church and the United States is doing to help. We start in Iraq. As forces battle ISIS, Christians are struggling to survive. Earlier this year, we visited the Kurdish section of Iraq and saw firsthand the impact of the violence in this ancient Christian community. This church in Betnaya is a stunning example of the terror Christian communities have endured under ISIS. The crucifix spray-painted with a large X. Another cross inside the church riddled with bullet holes. Every Christian symbol in this small northern town in the Nineveh Plain is defaced or obliterated. The graveyard headstones are uprooted. Not even the dead are entitled to peace here. ISIS controlled this town for 2 years in the Kurdish region of Iraq. They were pushed out by Kurdish forces, backed by the U.S., late last year.
Was it farther north?
I spoke to the general who helped liberate this town.
It's our job to be here, to protect our people. No matter how they are Christian or Muslim or Yazidi, it's our job to protect them.
And now stands guard against ISIS, fighting in Mosul, 15 miles away. Iraq used to be home to several 100,000 Christians known as Chaldeans, Syriacs, or Assyrians for centuries. They have long suffered persecution and even genocide, most recently in the chaotic aftermath of the U.S.-led invasion in 2003. The church says when the Islamic State took over parts of Iraq in 2014, between 100 and 120,000 Christians fled. And the church estimates that 1.5 million Christians lived in the country in 2003. Now, the church says fewer than 200,000 remain. And it is expected that that number will continue to shrink. Joining us now is Philippe Nassif, Executive Director of In Defense of Christians. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as you can see from the trip, it was quite an experience. That town of Betnaya, 90% of it was just completely flattened. You've been there. Absolutely. What are your thoughts?
Well, you know, we've seen these images for years now coming out of northern Iraq where you have entire villages that have been depopulated, you have entire populations that have been displaced, and you have the actual physical infrastructure completely destroyed and eliminated. It's a campaign really of extinction. It is.
And you know, Archbishop Warda of the Archdiocese of Erbil told me that it's possible Christianity will be completely wiped out from that region. Mm-hmm. If not, at least maybe only 50,000 Christians will be there. Mm-hmm. And out of the Middle East altogether. You advocate safe zones. Tell me about that and how that can help Iraqi Christians.
Right. So like you said, and so as the Archbishop Warda said as well, you know, we're very concerned with the complete elimination of Christianity and religious minorities in the Middle East, especially in Iraq. So one of the things that we at In Defense of Christians are advocating for is the creation of safe zones, which would essentially protect the population that currently remains in these areas, provide security, stability, and then eventual economic opportunity to these people in these areas, allows them to return home and rebuild their lives. We already have the military assets in the region that are that exist to sort of protect these areas. It would be led by the United States and international coalition forces, But it's really the only solution to make sure Christianity remains in the region.
There are a lot of people who would disagree with you there,
Sure.
who say that, Iraqis among themselves have difficulty getting along. And so how can you say that those people, along with U.S. folks, are going to keep these towns safe? Well, we would go through checkpoints. We went through one near Al-Kosh in the north, and they would not let anyone through who wasn't Christian.
Right. I think one of the differences between some of the folks that disagree with our approach is that they're not looking at it more holistically. What we want is self-governing areas where Christians and Yazidis can sort of administer themselves, protect themselves, and allow themselves to return home and rebuild their lives. These are autonomous regions, essentially, but we need a safe zone to be created across that area to make sure that people actually feel safe and can return home before the rebuilding begins.
What does the international community need to do right now?
Well, I think security, stability, and economic opportunity are the three big things that need to happen.
What about
right
food
now.
and medicine?
Absolutely. I mean, people are talking about, liberating these areas from ISIS. They're forgetting the fact that ISIS didn't just drive people out or kill people. They destroyed crops, graveyards, all trace of human existence in these areas.
And there's no electricity, and there's no water, and
there's nothing.
They don't have any way of getting money to come back. So where does the money come from?
That has to come from the international community. The same way that we respond to a tsunami, the same way that we respond to other wars and civil wars and unrest, we need an aid package to be delivered that isn't just rebuilding, but is also food, medicine, infrastructure development, as well as securing these areas too.
All right. Well, we will most definitely be focusing on this issue a lot in the future. We hope you come back and join us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
Philippe Nassif, Executive Director of In Defense of Christians.
Appreciate it.
The Knights of Columbus has been instrumental in convincing the United States to declare the war in Iraq a genocide against Christians. They've launched an ad campaign to raise awareness for funds for Christians in the Middle East whose homes are uninhabitable.
The future of Christianity in Iraq depends on you.
Wake up and take action. Pray for my people, help my people, and save my people.
That was Father Douglas Bazzi, who was abducted, tortured, and nearly killed by an Islamist group in Iraq. The Knights have donated more than $12 million for Christian refugee relief since 2014. And we thank the Knights for their support of this program. The Knights of Columbus isn't the only group helping out in Iraq. Samaritan's Purse is a non-denominational organization whose mission it is to do the utmost to follow Christ's command by going to the aid of the world's poor, sick, and suffering. Joining us is Ken Isaacs, Vice President, Programs and Government Relations at Samaritan's Purse. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lauren. It's nice to be with you.
Vice President Pence said America will prioritize protecting Christians abroad, yet they haven't appointed an ambassador at large for international religious freedom. And Christians, I believe, are beginning to question whether or not the administration is going to take more concrete action. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was very encouraged today when I heard Vice President Pence say that Christian persecution, religious freedom, was going to be a foreign policy priority for the administration. I think that that is a great start, and it remains to be seen how they're going to roll that out. I think that there has been a slow start in putting down all the many different levels of staff that need to be put into the State Department and many other departments of the government.
What do you think the next steps should be?
Well, I think that, honestly, I think we're in a situation where the government is still forming in many ways. I know that there are many political appointees that have to be put in. We will be working with some congressmen and senators and putting some things forward to help strengthen religious freedom and the end of persecution against Christians.
I know that you were in Iraq in December. I was in Iraq in last month. And it seems to me like what they need there to rebuild is money.
Well, they do need money. They need a lot of money, but they also need security. Many of the Christians that I have talked to right there in Erbil who came from Mosul, they don't feel that it's just an issue with ISIS attacking, because when ISIS came into Mosul, their Sunni neighbors came out and participated in looting their property and killing their families. So this is a lot of deep, deep divisions here. And at the end of the day, it isn't just about having your house rebuilt. It's about whether or not you can live in community and society safe. And this gets at the very root of what persecution is.
And what?
And that is that if something is held against you, action is taken against you because of what you believe.
And whether or not that you should come back to a home or go to another country where you know you're not going to be persecuted. And you know, I know that you have put together an emergency hospital in Iraq and are working in that region to help them. Thank you so much for joining us. Ken Isaacs, Vice President of Samaritan's Purse.
Thank you, Lauren.
Coming up, how the United States Congress is helping persecuted Christians around the world. And I'll take you back to Iraq at a critical moment for the Christian community. The head of the Chaldean Catholic Church returned to Mosul, Iraq, 3 years after ISIS pushed Christians out. Patriarch Louis Raphael Sacco visited churches and monasteries recently liberated by government forces. He met with the Major General of the Iraqi Army, who told him he hopes for a swift return of Christians to Mosul. Thank you for watching this special edition of EWTN News Nightly. Iraqi forces are getting closer to ousting ISIS from its last remaining stronghold in Mosul. Earlier this year, we visited one Christian community that pushed out the terror group and is starting over. For 2 weeks, ISIS occupied the Christian town of Tel Askof in the Kurdish area of Iraq. While the damage is not as extensive as neighboring villages, there is limited electricity and water. Empty streets echo easier times. Signs warning of IEDs left behind by ISIS, also known as Daesh, are plastered throughout this ancient town. This electrical worker invited us in for breakfast. But slowly, families are returning. What do you think of Daesh?
What do you think?
You.
I?
400 have come back so far.
That is not good, because we go from my house 2 years and 6 months.
Little by little, store owners are opening shop. This man and his 3 children sort hardware. Try it. Oh my God. This baker spent his morning making baklava. The families are returning to the war-torn region thanks to the work of the Nineveh Reconstruction Committee, a group made of Christians of different denominations, including Catholics. But Steve Rasha, who is on the committee, says it's now or never to rebuild.
What we're hearing from the security forces and what we're hearing from the priests as well is that it's critical that we move these people back in as quickly as possible, especially in the Iraqi sector, that they need to be moving in by June, and they need to be really back in those communities by the end of the summer, or it's going to be too late for them.
At Palm Sunday Mass, their traditions took on more meaning. Archbishop Bashir Warda is responsible for this flock and is taking care of thousands of Christian refugees who left the Nineveh plain when ISIS invaded. He says Christians have the solution to terrorism and acts of hatred.
The only response to this violence is Jesus Christ. This is what we need. And who's going to give Jesus to Middle East? We cannot expect Muslims or Jewish to give. We expect from Christians to give Jesus Christ.
Warda says the Christians who remain are injured but able to forgive, witnesses that peace is possible here. Several members of Congress are working tirelessly to help those persecuted at the hands of ISIS. Just last month, the House of Representatives unanimously passed a bill to provide funding for Iraq and Syria. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has more.
Haider Elias is a member of the Yazidi faith. The Islamic State killed his brother.
Well, I feel devastated when I first heard. I was actually on the phone with him like 5 minutes prior to him being killed.
ISIS has also targeted and killed countless Christians in Iraq.
The majority of the Christian population has left, and we are really becoming an endangered species in Iraq.
In fact, it's estimated there were more than 1 million Christians in Iraq in 2002. Now that number is between 100 and 200,000. But Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey says money from the U.S. government is not getting to Christians.
They're desperate. They need our humanitarian assistance. In 2017, we'll spend $2.4 billion for the humanitarian needs of people in the Middle East, in refugee camps. Why aren't the Christians getting it? Why are they being bypassed?
Last night, the House passed a bill sponsored by Representative Smith to make sure U.S. funding actually goes to Christians and Yazidis.
Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
The leader of the Knights of Columbus says the unanimous support is significant.
ISIS has made quite clear one of their great goals is to eliminate the religious minorities from the region, particularly the Christians. And so Congress last night, by passing this bill, said, no, you're not going to achieve that goal. We are going to provide the emergency assistance, the aid, to make sure that these communities live.
Correspondent Jason Calvi was reporting from the Capitol. The bill is now in the Senate. Representative Chris Smith and Supreme Knight Carl Anderson are urging senators to act quickly. In April, we sent correspondent Mark Irons to the Pentagon to question top brass about its plan for peacekeeping in the Middle East.
Lauren, as you know from your recent trip to Iraq, the Archdiocese of Erbil says more than 100,000 Christians have fled in the last 2 years. ISIS has persecuted and killed Middle East Christians while destroying their communities and churches. At the Pentagon today, Army General Joseph Martin briefed the press on the fight against ISIS via live feed from Baghdad. I asked the general what the U.S. will do to help those persecuted Christians rebuild in Iraq.
We're here as 23 nations to advise and enable and assist the Iraqi security forces to defeat Daesh, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
It's clear from that response that the focus is not on rehabilitating Christians in areas where ISIS has been defeated, but defeating ISIS attacks now concentrated in West Mosul in Iraq. The general did say it's in the U.S. interest to continue to back Iraqi forces there.
We understand that a safer Iraq, a more stable Iraq, means a more stable region, and a more stable region means we're safer back home.
As the fighting continues, Christians are among the hundreds of thousands who are either displaced or trapped in Mosul. And even if ISIS is defeated, many worry that Christians will not return to that area. Lauren?
Correspondent Mark Irons at the Pentagon. Up next, a religious sister's mission in the Middle East to protect Christians from persecution. Plus, we return to Iraq to meet Michigan's Father Gerald Gwaronsky. He tells me why he packed up and moved to the Middle East. Welcome back to our Christian persecution edition of EWTN News Nightly. Since 2007, the State Department has been recognizing women from around the world with the International Women of Courage Award. It honors those women who advocate for human rights, oftentimes at great risk to their well-being. This year, 13 women received the award in March. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsby spoke to one of them, a nun from Syria.
Joining us now is one of the award winners, Sister Caroline Tahan, or Sister Carol as she's known, and we want to welcome Rania Hajazin, our translator, for the interview as well. So Rania, the first question I want to ask her is to tell us about the programs that Sister Carol has founded in Syria.
Sister Carol, ما هي البرامج اللي بدأتيها في سوريا؟
بدينا برامج أول شيء أنا بشتغل بمجال مع UNHCR.
I work closely with the UNHCR
تعليم مهنة الخياطة للنساء.
To teach women the skill of sewing.
طبعا هذا ببرنامج مدته سنة.
That's in a program that's been going on for about a year.
بالنهاية كمان كل ست بتحصل على مكنة خياطة حتى تبدأ شغلها.
And at the end of the program, each woman receives a sewing machine upon graduation to start her new profession.
هيك نحن بنمنح فرصة عمل لكل ست بتدخل لبيتنا.
And that way we can provide each woman and a work opportunity that would allow her, every woman that comes into our home, a work opportunity for the future.
كمان أنا مديرة مدرسة.
I'm also a principal of a school.
في عنا 200 ولد.
We have 200 children.
بيفوتوا لعنا مع المدرسة طبعا إسلام ومسيحية.
Who come to our school, they are both Muslim and Christian children.
كمان نحن بنحاول كمان ندمج معهم أطفال متضررين من الحرب.
We also try to incorporate into this group children who have been traumatized by the war.
So what's interesting, Sister Carol, is how you stay strong in such a war-torn region. How do you do that spiritually?
Sister Carol, كيف بتحافظي على ثباتك الروحي في ظل الصراع، في ظل الحرب في بلدك؟
أنا حكم هلأ الرسالة كمان اللي أنا عم بعيشها بحكم احتكاكي مع الناس، بحكم إنه أنا كمان إذا بدي أحكي عن شيء عن إيمان أو عن فرح لازم أعيشه أنا أول شيء قبل ما أنا أحكي للناس.
As a nun who's living out her mission and dealing with people on the front lines and dealing with people face to face, if I'm going to preach something, I must also live it.
نحن لازم نكون وصرنا وعم نقدر نعيش إنه نكون نحن منارة لكل شخص بيجي لعنا بإنه المستقبل اللي راح يجي هو مستقبل حلو.
We must be and we are and we have been a lighthouse to a beacon, a light beacon to everybody that comes to see us, to show them that the future is brilliant.
وكل شخص مكرس ما فيه إلا يقول إنه نحن روحانيتنا روحانية يسوع القائم من بين الأموات.
As a devoted believer, as somebody who's devoted their life, we must say that our devotion is a result of the risen Lord Jesus.
عشان هيك أنا هاي كلمتي أنا بقدر هلأ وصلها إنه نحن السلام رح يجي.
That is my message that I can now tell you, is that peace will come.
يسوع غلب الموت.
Jesus overcame death.
It's such a powerful message, noting that Easter is right around the corner.
رسالتك قوية جدا، خاصة نحن عارفين إنه عيد القيامة جاي علينا.
Sister Carol, you are an inspiration to so many. Thank you for all the work that you do and that your order does.
شكرا سيستر كارول على كل اللي بتعمليه وعلى اللي بيعملوه رهبنة الحوالي.
And know that all of us at EWTN are praying for you.
وأعرفي من فضلك إنه كلنا في هاي المحطة بنصلي لك.
شكرا.
Thank you. Thank you.
What a wonderful and helpful woman. And humble. We leave you tonight with a story of an American priest who gave up the comforts of his Michigan diocese voluntarily. He did it in order to help those persecuted for their faith. He's one of the few American priests working in the northern part of the country in the city of Erbil, where Catholics have fled from ISIS. Father Gerald Gwaronsky has made the plight of Christians in Iraq his life's mission. He first learned of their near extinction at the hands of ISIS from TV reports in his Michigan rectory. Father Gerald says he's here because of love.
Thank you. By coming here, I can show them that all around the world, people are watching, people are praying, and we care, and somebody cares enough to invest their own life in their lives.
Father Gerald has lived in the rectory at St. Joseph's Cathedral in Ankawa, this Catholic area of Erbil, for just 6 months.
This is my room. I have a particular devotion to Our Lady of Perpetual Help, actually.
He helps in the parish, a center of activity for Catholics. The 55-year-old Michigan native has come, he says, to give some hope and consolation to people weary of war.
Biggest problem is that Iraq has been at war for 40 years. I mean, it's a long time. And so society is all just torn up and disordered. It's hard to build a life in that kind of situation.
He spends his days teaching high school and seminarians and ministering to Latin Rite Catholics in Erbil. And though he doesn't speak Arabic or Aramaic, the local languages, he's making a dent.
Hope is essential to carry on with your life in spite of whatever might be looming even in the near future.
It's a calling Father Gerald is determined to answer, standing side by side with his Christian brethren, 6,000 miles from home. We thank you for watching this Christian persecution edition of EWTN News Nightly. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Good night, and God bless.